Starting today, Memorial Day Monday, we released our Central Indiana scoreboard show at 5 a.m., and that's going to be our goal every day going forward. All the previous night's highlights from sports all over Central Indiana, Pacers, Fever, Colts, IndyCar, IU, Purdue, and the best high school sports coverage in Central Indiana. Please join us every morning for the Central Indiana Scoreboard Show.
You're listening to the Central Indiana Sports Report with your host, Greg Mengelt.
Welcome, Indy 500 fans, to the Central Indiana Sports Report. I'm your host, Greg Mengelt. Here with me is producer Susie, and we have on the Riverside app, Dave Chanley and Heather Abt to give us their views on yesterday's Indy 500 from the grandstands. What are you in the South
Vista. South Vista. High atop the South Vista.
So his view from high atop the South Vista. Dave and Heather and get their report on what happened. And where does it rank, Dave? I wouldn't say an all-time classic, but a very good one, right?
It was good, but definitely not an all-time classic. I think especially the start was tainted with what happened. And, of course, the dropping of the green flag at the same time the yellow flag flew, so the first few laps being under caution. I've never seen that before, and I really think they could have probably done that better by stopping and then restarting the whole thing. But who's for me to say? But yeah, the sad part was for McLaughlin that really tainted things. Even the delay in the rain kind of tainted things a little bit. It made it more difficult because all the hype and things that goes into that. You're ready, and then you have to wait for another 30 minutes.
You can't imagine the drivers.
Oh my, yeah.
Just out there going around in circles going, I'm ready to go, let's go.
Yeah.
Once it got started, though, the small teams really were dominant. But before we talk about that, how bad of a month was it for the Penske race? That has to be his worst month as a race driver.
I think quite a few years ago they didn't make the race. This would rank
correct.
Yes, this would rank second to that because it was a disaster from the get-go. We had talked, and all the prior races building up to Indy, they had struggled, and we thought they would get it straightened away. They didn't. Yeah, but they didn't do it, and they just struggled mightily and were never really a factor.
And it's probably going to be a struggle the rest of the season for them with all the new personnel and, trying to fight through a scandal. Not much of a scandal. It seems more like a lack of attention to detail than actual cheating. Still, it's got to be right up there. I mean, you throw in the second time this has happened with the scandal, and it's just as bad as 1995. At least that year they went on to win a championship. This year, they look pretty lost.
Yes. I am sure at the end of the year, there's going to be more changes. And I think that will include at least one driver, maybe more.
Yeah, you might be right about that. I'm pretty sure at least one. We're looking at that for sure. Will Power is not getting the results that you have to be a Penske driver, and he has over the years. But, Helio Castroneves won 3 Indy 500s for him, and he still chucked him when it was time. We know how Roger Penske operates, and I don't think Will Power will be there next year.
I would agree. Plus, maybe more. But back to the race.
Hold on.
Go ahead.
Hold on, Dave. Real quick.
Yeah.
And on top of that, it's going to make changes in a lot of other teams because everybody in that paddock is going to want those jobs at Penske.
Absolutely. And there's a couple guys yesterday that made a case for it.
They sure did. All right, let's get back to yesterday's Indianapolis 500. And really, we ended up with the right winner, Alex Palou, a great champion. We've talked about him all year and talked about him as the favorite going into the 500. I don't think any of us picked him officially, but we all were like, yeah, if we had to, he'd be our pick for sure. But what a great day for the small teams. And it's this formula that IndyCar has, like it or not, has really made it even for every single team.
Yes, really like it from that standpoint. There were some guys that really stepped up. Malukas and the Foyt team, just
The
hats
Foyt
off to
team is
them.
great.
Yes, they had a chance to win that thing.
I think
And
Malukas is
Malukas,
the star of the day, Dave.
yeah, I would agree with that. He was there all day. And Palou made a great pass on him, or he might have been in the winner's circle. He made a great pass on him right after the last pit stop. Um, Palou, victory favors the team making the fewest mistakes, and in the long run, that's Ganassi and Palou because they didn't make any mistakes. And look at the mistakes made. You have to go down and feel for McLaughlin, Marco, Sato in particular, because Sato had a jet. Ryan Hunter-Ray almost stole the race and would have had a chance and messed up in the pits. Connor Daly. Feel for Connor Daly. What a great drive. And he was right there. And then the rear of his car went away. And that was his day. Malukas and Ericsson were phenomenal. Great strategy by Ericsson. The best team won. The best driver won. The
I
two
think that's right.
passes
I think
by
so.
the two passes, the one over Malukas, and then late in the first with about 15 to go, the pass on Ericsson was in the first turn was just perfect. And let me. This will be funny to people, but Palou probably should send some prize money to DeFrancesco and Louis Foster because they did a phenomenal job of teaming up and staying out front, all to stay. Of course, they had every right to because they were trying to stay on the lead lap. And as you know from the aerodynamics, as you figure this out, the first two cars can keep passing each other, but it creates a turbulence for that third and fourth car that is almost impossible
Absolutely.
to pass. And so thus Ericsson trying to get around those two, he just couldn't do it. Had it just been one of them, they would have had no problem. But with
Right.
both of them working together, there was so much turbulence, they just could not pass. And Palou
I
made the great
understand.
pass.
I
Yeah.
understand, Dave, that they have the right to stay out there, but at 5 laps to go, IndyCar should have black flagged them and said, "Let's have a race at the front for the win."
There's a lot to be said for that, and it would have been just like they were racing. They were changing positions every time, and had
I'm
Ericsson
not
and
sure Malukas doesn't win the 500 if those two are not out front. I think he had
yeah,
the best car.
yes, and I'll say this on Palou. I said the best team and the best driver won, but I don't think he had the best car.
I don't think he did. I think Malukas and Daly had the best cars. Of course, Daly didn't at the end, so it didn't matter. But to me, it looked like Malukas had the best car all day. He was just sitting there waiting, and then when the time came, there was nothing he could do.
Nothing. Yeah, his hands were tied. Exactly.
Yep. There was not a car
Exactly.
that could get by anybody in that last stint with those two
No.
cars out front. All right, well, let's bring in Heather real fast because Heather early in the week predicted Dixon was going to win, and then on Saturday changed it to Kyle Larson. So Heather had a really bad day with her predictions. You want to
Yeah, it
talk
was
about
a rough
Heather?
one. Yeah, I mean, to start the race, when it first started, we saw that McLaughlin had spun out, and I was so worried about that I didn't even know Dixon's car was on fire. So when I found out, that was pretty devastating. And then him having to come into the pits and being 3 laps down, just he never could recover from that after. There was not enough yellows to even help him get back on the lead lap at all. And then Larson spinning out on lap 91, which he wouldn't have been able to finish the race anyways with having to get to Charlotte. He would have had 25 laps when he would have had to get out of the car because of all the yellows and stuff. So, I mean, it was just a rough day for my two drivers.
It really was. This was your 10th Indy 500. Where does this rank? Was this one of the best? Well, how did you feel about the experience?
I would say just because of how weird the race was with all the yellows and it just being so cold outside, so the tires weren't warming up as they had been for practices and stuff. I'd probably rank it just in the middle. It wasn't the best, it wasn't the worst that I've been to. So I just think that it could have been a better experience.
All right, and I think we're going to continue to hopefully to talk to Heather throughout the IndyCar season. She is a huge IndyCar fan. We love getting her perspective. I really thought, Heather, this was Dixon's year. I don't know. He just was cursed from the beginning, it seemed.
Yes, I mean I really did feel as if Dixon had a really good car with all the practices and stuff, and even whenever he talked about it after the interview, he just said that there was nothing that they could have done to prevent it. They had no idea how it happened, anything like that.
Yeah, the announcers on the race said, "Oh well, that just needs to cool off, and he should be fine." But man, I don't think they saw how big that fire was.
Yeah, it was a
On
pretty
your
big
brakes,
fire.
'cause it was. There's no way that didn't cause damage.
And back to my guy, O'Ward, he finishes fourth, but yet he was never a factor.
Never a factor. Really, the entire McLaren team was never really a factor. And real fast, let's talk about Marcus Ericsson, because I thought if there was a guy from Andretti that was going to make a move, it was Herta, and he had another. Andretti had a poor day as well. All the big teams, except for you mentioned O'Ward was fourth, but was not a factor, and of course Palou winning it. The big teams really had a bad day. That says a lot about this series that those small teams can be that kind of factor. But back to Marcus Ericsson, he just seems to be there. Where he wasn't anywhere as a factor at all, and then all of a sudden, there he is, and that's 4 years in a row.
Yes, yeah, he just sits there. He is a sly fox. He just sits there. He's right toward the front. He was always toward the front. Their strategy and being able to make a later pit stop just played right into their hands perfectly. And he came out. And when he came out of the pit, it was his race to lose. And
shockingly, they short pitted. It was a great strategy. As much as the big teams struggled, that's where they always have a little bit of an advantage is with those strategists that are so good, and they just put him right out there in front. And unfortunately for him, I just don't think he's quite as good a driver as Joseph Newgarden and Alex Palou, or he'd be a four-time reigning
maybe
champion
a 3 or 4. Yeah. He's good, but Palou stepped up. Like I said, we said best driver, best team won, and
it was impossible to make a pass there, and he figured out a way, and that's why he's the best in the world right now.
Yes, I agree. It was looking back on the race. I wish they'd have started it different. It was a mistake fest. The attrition was higher than usual. Dixon, Rossi, Newgarden, as far as failures, and
drivers.
And
then poor Scott McLaughlin.
Yeah, that really was embarrassing for him.
Yeah, and an opportunity blown with Penske, and you don't want to blow those opportunities at Indy. They're too important to him.
Correct. Now, the one guy we just talked about briefly, kudos to David Malukas. What a fabulous drive, and they just were there all day. And, yeah, they had a chance to win, but they had to deal with Palou.
And really also to AJ and Larry Foyt, particularly Larry, who has turned that program from an afterthought to not a contender at all. Don't get me wrong, but a race program that's going to show up from time to time and be really competitive with two really good drivers.
Two really good drivers. Ferrucci finished sixth. He was not really a factor, but he was always there.
He was, and that's again 4 years, 5 years in a row, always right there
Yeah,
at the front. That
he is
guy, if he
always at the
gets
front.
that guy, Connor Daly, those guys get a chance with a decent shot, they're going to win it one day, and that says a lot about this 500. That because you watch Formula One and it's just such a joke.
Oh, yes, yeah. It is absolutely. You know who's going to win before. You know who's going to finish second. It is.
And you're watching that 500 on Sunday, 100 laps in, you're thinking, man, there are 19 cars out here that could win this race.
Yeah, there were, and lots of different strategies playing out.
Yeah, that was fun.
It was, because it was hard to follow. Usually I follow it pretty well, and I'm sitting there and I'm looking around and I'm thinking, I really don't know who has advantage here. The only thing I said was, with 100 laps to go, I looked at the guy sitting in front of me, and he said, "Who's going to win?" And I said, "Palou." I said, because he always wins. And the guy looked, well, okay. After the race, he said, "Well, you were right." And that, the only thing I can say, the only thing I had it to base this on was, well, he's the best out there, so he wins.
He really is the best out there. And what a class act. Great. Just has really, and this happens most of the time, but with Western Europeans, sometimes their focus is Formula One, and that's what they want to do their whole lives. And he has just really become part of this series and really embraced it. And going to the Pacers game after the win last night, and
that was good.
Just he did everything right. He's doing everything right, and we are lucky to have him in the IndyCar series.
He will be a great ambassador for the Indy 500, a great ambassador for IndyCar. He just will. He's good.
Dave, Heather, thank you so much for taking part of your Memorial Day to recap your Indy 500 with us. Always appreciate your time, and we will be talking to you before and or after the Detroit race, which is coming up this weekend. Thanks again to Dave and Heather for joining us, and thank you for listening to the Central Indiana Sports Report. Please don't forget, every morning we release our Central Indiana Scoreboard show. We'd love to have you with us. And of course, we are eternally grateful to all of those who gave their lives for this amazing country. Central Indiana Sports Report is a product of ITG Media, and I love Susie.